Ian, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Your father, actually, when he started out with bodybuilding, I think you mentioned he met Arnold Schwarzenegger. And you yourself, you also have some interesting background with the bodybuilding and the Reg Park family as such. Tell us about that.
My grandfather moved from the East End of London in England. He came to South Africa. Before Reg Park came to South Africa, they obviously both married South African women. And my grandfather, who I called Zayda, it's Yiddish for granddad, he knew Johnny Isaacs, and Johnny Isaacs was Reg Park's brother-in-law. And through Johnny Isaacs, he met Reg Park. And my grandfather actually trained at Reg's gym, for a period of time. Okay. Then my father competed against Jon Jon Park, Reg Park's son, in Southern Transvaal swimming throughout certain periods of school and high school. And my father actually took up bodybuilding, and he was considering, I think it was late 70s, maybe 1980, competing in Mr. Maccabi competition. The gym he was at was called Sambuza Gym, and the guy that owned and ran it was a bodybuilder by the name of Cecil Grixt, who Kevin actually knew. And he wanted to convince my father to compete, and my father decided, no, the dieting thing's not really for him. My father knew of Jon Jon, he knew of Reg Park, he met Reg Park, he met Arnold at this gym in the early 70s at Sambuza's gym. So what happened was Arnold, this was around about the time where Arnold actually fell through the posing dais and injured his knee. So he wasn't able to actually pose properly and to do as he would have liked because he still had the knee injury. But my father, because he gotten quite close with Cecil, who ran the gym, he got invited to actually meet Arnold because Cecil knew my father idolized Arnold, and he idolized Reg Park as well. So he got to meet Arnold, he got to see Arnold pose. So I don't know what year this is, it could have been 71, 72, 73, somewhere around there. And then Reg Park actually came to the gym. And my father got to, Arnold asked for a cup of tea, and Cecil got my dad to quickly go make the tea and bring the tea to my father. My father's obviously a teenager at the time, he idolized these people. And my father says Reg actually gave him a hard time for drinking tea, I think because of the sugar in the tea as well. So yeah, my father got to meet both of them. Arnold actually signed a magazine for my father, and Arnold even said to my father, I don't actually remember seeing this photo before. It was a side chest photo that Arnold hadn't seen published yet at the time, I think. I think that's what actually happened. So yeah, and then my father had interactions. He would see Reg Park throughout, growing up and throughout his time while we still lived in Joburg. And then around about 2018, 2019, I'd already been training at Kevin for about 3 years now. I don't know how, but I managed to get Jon Jon's number from Kevin, and I made contact with Jon Jon. And I could say from that period, 2019, 2020, 2021, I'd speak to Jon Jon here and there, but since maybe 2022, I've been speaking to Jon Jon at least on average once a month. I actually contacted Jon Jon Park, not thinking he would ever respond to me, but he was very cordial and very friendly, and I've got to say he's very patient with me. I think I send him a lot of messages. I might annoy him. I ask a lot of questions, but he's also such a great guy. He is friendly, he never has an issue responding, he's always willing to share his knowledge. He's been very, very patient with me. And Jon Jon himself actually was going to compete as a bodybuilder. I don't know, he did compete, but I don't think he competed professionally. A lot of people don't know he actually was a Commonwealth and Olympic swimmer, and he gave up swimming to pursue bodybuilding, which is quite crazy. And Jon Jon's told me that his father said to him, I don't think you should do this, but I support you doing it. I think you should actually try and see how far your swimming career takes you, especially because you're at an Olympic level. But yeah, I've spoken to Jon Jon quite a few times. In fact, I would say easily In the last week, I think I've spoken to Jon, or the last 2 weeks, sorry, 3-4 times. So I'm keeping in contact with Jon, and we don't just discuss bodybuilding, but we discuss other sports and other things in general. Because he does live in America, so it's not like I call him. We generally just communicate via voice notes or WhatsApp messages.
So Ian, tell us about your first HIIT training experience with Kevin.
It must have been about late 2015, very early 2016. I was training at one of the well-known franchises, gym franchises in South Africa. And I came across this gym. I was searching for high-intensity training gyms in South Africa, just out of curiosity. And then this gym popped up. It said Kevin's Gym, and I looked at it. I went into the website, and it said it's here in Pretoria, which I was very surprised. So I phoned Kevin there and then, and I said to Kevin, can I come for a session? And he said, of course, not at all. And I said, how much is the session? He said, no, I'm not going to charge you for the first session. I'm not going to charge you. Just come, have a workout, see what it's like, and then sure. So I came that week, a day or two later, and I had my first workout with Kevin.
You did actually train high intensity style before? Or at least you thought you did?
So when I started training, like we've mentioned, Reg Park and the older guys, Cecil Grixt, my father, who was trained by him, they all believed in full body 3 times a week workout. So that's how my training started out. I did try high volume multiple days a week, but I did that. And then I moved over to high intensity training around about 2009. After getting injured, I thought maybe I need to reevaluate how I train. I thought I knew what high intensity training was until I came and had my session with Kevin. Like, I was used to training to failure and working out hard, and I'd made fairly good progress, but with Kevin it was a completely different beast. That first workout I'll never forget. I even remember exactly what I did. So I did leg press, I did barbell bent over rows, and I did dips. And the leg press, I thought, what have I got myself into here? Because I had trained to failure before, but I'd never been pushed this far past failure. Because when you think you've done your reps and you're done and you can't do another one, Kevin will say, give me another one. So you do another one. And then he'll say, give me another one. And you'll do another one. And he'll say, give me 2 more. And you do those 2. And then he'll say, give me 1 more. And at that point you're thinking, what is this guy trying to do to me? And I was absolutely finished from that workout. In fact, my wife was with me. I had to slink out through the door on the side over here, and I was on the grass, dry heaving and vomiting, and I was on that grass for a good 20 minutes until I caught my breath and I had stopped shaking. And it was a hell of a workout, and I was hooked. I knew immediately there and then, this is where I need to continue training if I want to see progress. The progress that I thought I should be at least reaching or getting to. I knew I was going to get stronger and I was going to get into better shape, and for me that was the most important thing. I knew I was never going to, even at that point, I was already in my 30s, I was never going to compete. Competing and being at that level, never going to happen. I realized that very early, but I knew I could be a better version of myself, and that's exactly how I felt. Kevin treated everyone that came to his gym. It was a better version of you, making you better.
What sparked your interest into bodybuilding?
When I finished high school, just after high school, I weighed like 50 kilos. So as you can see, I'm a very small guy, slight frame. Kevin even took notice of that. And my father, he was very interested in bodybuilding, as I've mentioned. He gave me his old books. I signed up at a gym, and then I started training. And I started obviously making some progress, and that really sparked an interest in the history of bodybuilding as much as working out. I really enjoyed the working out part, but I also enjoyed reading up and looking at the pictures of these older guys and the history behind all of that.
You also have a collection of some interesting magazines and books as well.
So my father actually still had 2 or 3 of his bodybuilding books from when he was still training and interested in bodybuilding. So he gave them to me, and those were the books that sparked my interest. So there's Joe Weider's Bodybuilding, which is from 1981, which I still have. There is a Joe Weider short course system, which has different stars from the time. So like Arnold, Lou Ferrigno, Mike Mentzer, Robbie Robinson, Dennis Tenorino. These guys had their workouts for different body parts or what they suggested. So I've got that book, and then I've still got the original publication of Pumping Iron, the book that was released before the documentary. And yeah, my father gave those to me, and that sparked my interest. So obviously, you know, around about that time, we're talking about 2006, the internet was starting to be used more widely. So I'd start searching on the internet about these guys in the books, and that led me down to a rabbit hole. But yeah, to spark my interest, I saw pictures of 3 specific bodybuilders. There was a Chris Dickerson, who Kevin spoke about. He was actually friends with Chris Dickerson. He had brought Chris out here, or Chris had come out and had spent time with Kevin and Kathy and the family. There was Mike Mentzer, who's obviously behind me, who was a huge inspiration to Kevin and to myself. Okay, and then Reg Park, also huge inspiration, especially to Kevin. I know he took Kevin under his wing, and he actually did a lot for Kevin's career, and to get him ready and prepared and in the right direction. But also in the book, there were guys like Sergio Oliva, who unbelievably impressive. You know, guys like Reg Park and Sergio Oliva, possibly 2 of the greatest bodybuilders of all time with the greatest genetic potential, especially when you look at someone like Reg Park. No steroids, no availability to steroids, would never take steroids. Kevin, exactly the same. Kevin said, refused to take. To put into perspective, Reg Park, his genetic potential, he bench pressed 500 pounds. He missed being the first person in the world to bench press 500 pounds by 1 week. This is in a time when no one had ever done that. When Reg Park competed against Arnold, when Arnold was here in South Africa, but I know Reg Park competed against Arnold in a universe contest. Reg was in his 40s, Arnold was in his mid-20s, Arnold was on steroids, Reg never used steroids, and Arnold only beat Reg Park by half a point, which is unbelievable. And then that's, you know, seeing guys like that and thinking, oh, could I aspire to that? Obviously that wasn't the case, I didn't know better then, but I knew I could be a better version of myself. So that's what sparked the interest, and that's what led me to Kevin and training with Kevin. And Kevin really, he pushed you, he wanted to see the best for you, for every single one of his clients. And what really surprised me was the gym itself, the equipment here, the history with the equipment, the size of the gym, because it's very old school bodybuilding focused gym. It's all that you come and do here. You come, you train, you go. But the one thing that really impressed me about Kevin was he personally trained every single one of his clients. You had a session that you booked for a day and a time, and he personally put you through your paces, and he would record everything. He had a book per client, and he would write your name, the date, the exercise, the weight, the reps, every single workout. And also with me, I don't know if it was for with other trainees, we would do my measurements. So we'd measure my arms, my waist, I would weigh myself, so we could actually track progress as well. And Kevin did the same when my wife trained here. He had a book for her, and he would write her weights, her reps, her exercises. And it really, the time that Kevin would invest in the people that were training here, he focused on you and you alone. And that was great to experience. I'd never experienced that before. I trained in other commercial gyms. I trained at a gym that wasn't a franchise commercial gym. It was a great experience, but I'd never experienced as great as it was when I was with Kevin.
So Kevin has some interesting legendary equipment in his gym. Yourself, you trained on this machine. Tell us about this machine.
Okay, so this is one of the machines I used while I worked out with Kevin. So what really surprised me was Kevin has actual Nautilus machines. I'm not too sure on generation, I think it's second generation Nautilus. I've never seen any other gym with this sort of equipment. There was a lot of research, money, and time that went into the development of these machines. And to the average person, you wouldn't notice it. One of the gyms I was at, which was a smaller gym, bodybuilding style gym, this was years before I came to Kevin, they had machines and I thought, wow, are these actual Nautilus machines that I'd read about? But I later learned through one of the other members here at Kevin, who actually worked at that gym at the time I wasn't aware of. They found out about these machines here and they actually try to build their own and copy it, which you can't do. So here is the Nautilus hip and back. So this is one of the machines I would have used in a workout with Kevin. This works your hamstrings, your glutes, your lower back. Great machine. It's actually evolved to the point where it was used for rehab purposes. The guy who invented these machines, Arthur Jones, actually sold off Nautilus and started another company called Medex. And Medex was aimed directly, or specifically the market was for rehabilitation, not for bodybuilding purposes. But what makes these machines very unique is if you see the cam over here, it has this very specific shape, and that's why it's called Nautilus. It is the shape of a sea creature, which is a type of snail, Nautilus. And what this does is the resistance gets tougher the closer you get to the strongest part of the lift. So as an example, we're going to demonstrate how the hip and back was used, and it will also explain the cam movement and how as you got stronger throughout the range of motion, it's almost as if the weight gets heavier, and that's what made Nautilus very, very unique, and that was their selling point. Yeah. Okay. And then you're going to use your legs to push. So now you need to straighten your legs. There we go.
Okay.
And then back. Okay, so as you see, as he moves through the range of motion, the weight actually feels like it's getting heavier. It's because of the design of the cam, and this is what Nautilus did with every single one of their machines. And then, yeah, you want to try and hold it at the extended position for a moment or two. And that's also part of the Nautilus way of doing things, the Mike Mentzer way, and the Kevin way is no momentum is used. Kevin would always say, you don't actually need to count how many seconds you're doing, but it needs to be under control. So basically with Kevin, it would be a 2-second positive, 2-second hold, 2-second negative when I trained with Kevin. So the speed of movements really made the exercise much harder because there's no momentum. You're not cheating to get the weight up. Okay. How are you finding it?
Well, it's the first time I'm on this machine, but there's somehow a nice feeling to the hips.
It almost feels like it also decompresses the lower back, because this is working your lower back, your hamstrings, your glutes.
It's quite a comfortable feeling on the hips.
It's a comfortable feeling, yeah. Your hips, it's called the hip and back machine.
Makes sense.
It mimics almost like the sprint movement. Okay, so I used to do this. So my workout used to be start off with legs. So Kevin always used to have you do your bigger muscle groups first. So we'd always start off with legs because that requires the most amount of energy. So I would do this. I can't tell you how much weight I got to it. The stack is very, very deceiving. And then from this, immediately, once I reach failure, I would move on to Kevin's leg press machine, which is also the most deceptive leg press I've ever used. So coming from the commercial gym that I was at, which had a different style vertical leg press, a more modern style at the time, I was able to leg press, I think about 360, 370 for my sets. And then I came here and my first session with Kevin, I don't even think I had 200 on this. And it was far, far more difficult and harder, and that workout was very intense. And I got very used to using this equipment and obviously getting stronger. So this machine that Kevin has, the Nautilus pullover, is a very, very unique machine. The reason it was designed was Arthur Jones wanted to create a machine that would allow you to train the lats to failure without the biceps being the part that tires out first. So this, again, you can see the cam, the weight gets harder, you sit down, you're locked into place, your elbows go behind, and you actually do a pullover movement. So this is a great, great machine. And the fact that I came to this gym and I saw these machines for the first time, machines I'd seen in magazines or in videos and read about, I couldn't believe it. So the man who invented this, Arthur Jones, who invented these Nautilus machines and made millions upon millions upon millions of dollars from this. He had a huge empire. He sold off Nautilus. He started Medics, which was for rehabilitation used in hospitals and rehab centers. His son, Gary Jones, is the inventor of hammer strength, and a lot of people might recognize the hammer strength machines in gyms. There's different pull downs, rows, pressing machines that hammer strength has provided and made. The most famous bodybuilder to use hammer strength was Dorian Yates. They in fact created a machine called the DY machine, which was a rowing machine specifically because Dorian Yates liked to use it. So the benefit of this over doing a dumbbell or barbell pullover is it provides resistance through the entire range of motion. And that's what the Nautilus does. And then with this, the idea behind this was you reach failure with this, but you've used your triceps, so your biceps are fresh, because that's what's going to fail first in any rowing or pulling movement for your lats. So you would go from this straight to the pull down or to chins or to a barbell row, whatever it may be, to thoroughly work the lats.
So you've got some people that you can tell us about that Kevin told you about that he met?
Sure. So obviously we've discussed Reg Park and the influence he's had on bodybuilding. I don't know if it has been mentioned before, but as an example, posing the music wasn't a thing until Reg Park did it. And then obviously through Reg Park, Kevin would have met other great South African bodybuilders and international bodybuilders. But Kevin did meet and compete against and even train with some great bodybuilders throughout the time. So Kevin mentioned he almost got kicked out of Vince Gironda's gym, which is kind of like a badge of honor, because Vince was very specific on he didn't allow squats, bench press or deadlifts in his gym. If you didn't train us the way he said, he'd kick you out. As an example, Sylvester Stallone was kicked out of his gym. He was known as the trainer to the stars, so Denzel Washington, Carl Weathers, Sylvester Stallone, they all would have gone there at some point. Kevin told me stories about how Chris Dickerson had come to South Africa and he had had supper with his family. So Kevin and his family had supper with Chris and they were taking him back home, and then they got pulled over by the police at the time, and they were asking, you know, where's this guy from, where's his pass, and they had to try and talk their way out of that one. The bodybuilders that would have trained at Kevin's gym, so a lot of people don't know, but the 1975 Olympia and Mr. Universe was hosted here in South Africa. All the guys that were part of like Arnold's crew and gang that trained together, they trained at Reg's gym in Johannesburg. The other guys that were also the big names but needed a place to train, one of the gyms they came to was Kevin's in Pretoria. So Kevin told me Serge Nubret, Lou Ferrigno, countless others actually were in his gym preparing for that competition. Kevin even said to me he was shocked at how little weight these guys were using. He said Lou Ferrigno was only squatting with 60 kilos. A guy that big, that strong, he was very surprised by that. Kevin was on very good terms with Dennis Tenorino. He's got a signed poster from Dennis Tenorino, Frank Zane, Franco Colombo. In fact, Kevin told me a very funny story where it was a competition and Kevin was going out getting ready to do his individual posing routine, and Franco had convinced them to swap the tapes for the music. And another song came on. It was, I don't know if it was bagpipes or something, but it obviously didn't fit with Kevin's posing. And Kevin was a little confused, but he kind of just went with it. And Franco, he saw Franco there in the corner, sniggering, laughing at what he had just done. Kevin said Franco was always very nice, very friendly, but would do things like this all the time. Kevin also told me the favorite part about competition for him was the training. It was never the dieting, it was never the posing. He, in fact, I remember him saying he didn't enjoy posing. He just enjoyed the training. And also very, very strange to hear, I'd never heard anyone say this before, Kevin told me he got stronger as he got closer to a competition. Even though he was on fewer calories, restricting his diet, training just as hard, he got stronger. Kevin also told me a story where he was doing squats the one day and something went wrong and he felt something in his back and he couldn't complete the set. So they quickly took him to a chiropractor and they did an adjustment. They just popped everything back into place. Kevin came back and continued doing his set. He said he found that very, very funny. He just walked back in, continued doing his set. Very, very strong man, very, very, very strong bodybuilder. Even as he got older, Kevin was telling me he was doing Mike Mentzer's consolidated routine, and he always wanted me to do that routine, and I agreed in last year that we were both going to do the routine at the same time while Kevin was still not well. When he got back, we would do that routine. Unfortunately, that never happened, but Kevin was following that routine for many, many years, and even at his age, he was still squatting 120, 150 kilos, somewhere around that. Don't know how much he was deadlifting or pressing, but Kevin was a very, very strong bodybuilder and just such a great guy. Kevin did mention to me in his prep, in Mike Mentzer's prep for, I think it was either the 1977 or the 1978 Mr. Universe, that he actually trained with Mike while Mike was doing one of his workouts, and he said he's never seen shoulders and triceps like that before. He said they were unbelievable, and he said the weights that Mike was using was also ridiculous. Doing flies with 60 kilo dumbbells, which was, even by today's standards, that is unbelievably strong. Kevin also told me a story where he had gone to go compete at a show in America, and they were in a sauna, him and the guy that he was with, and Ray Mentzer was there as well. And this guy was asking Ray, so what do you do for your shoulders? Because he also noticed that Ray's shoulders were huge. And Ray said, I do one set of side laterals and one set of dumbbell bent over laterals. And the guy said, and what else? He said, no, that's it. And the guy couldn't, he saw that Ray was lying. He was flabbergasted. But then what you don't know is Ray was doing the side laterals to failure with 40 kilo dumbbells, the bent over laterals with who knows how much weight. So Kevin obviously got to train with some great bodybuilders that he competed against or just met throughout his time.
And yourself, when it came to diet, were you very strict? Did you follow anything specific, or?
So ever since I started training, it was an issue for me to put on weight. So I followed the old school style, very, very old school, of increasing calories. I would drink 500 mils of buttermilk a day, twice a day on the days that I trained. Back then I was training 3 days a week. And then I obviously got to the point, life gets ahead of you. Sometimes you lose interest or you're not taking care of yourself. I got very overweight, especially for my size and frame. And I decided, well, I need to do something about it. So all I would do is just manipulate my calories, so reduce my calorie intake. And that's something else that Kevin had to say. He would say, you don't need to worry too much about it. Just make sure you're getting in the right amount of carbohydrates, the right amount of protein, the right amount of good fats. Still enjoy your life, which you can, especially when you are controlling your calories. So if you're only eating 1,800 calories a day, it could all be cake. You're still within your calorie limits. They're empty calories, technically, as in you're not getting much protein and it's a lot of refined sugar, whatever it may be, but you'd still be losing weight. And yeah, that's what Kevin would tell me. He said, don't worry too much about it, especially because you're not going to be competing. You know, if you're competing, obviously you're going to have to eat more. I did notice that as I got bigger and stronger throughout my 20s and into my 30s, my appetite definitely increased. I could eat way more than I could before. And then in terms of supplementation, because I would ask Kevin, you know, what did you use? What would you recommend? Kevin only ever said monohydrate, creatine monohydrate. All he said was, all you need is creatine monohydrate. You don't need any of these other things. And he made a very good point about stating that. And even my father said to me, and a lot of the old school guys said, the whey protein shakes that you buy, the only reason that they became popular was originally the magazines were selling barbell sets. Magazines weren't that expensive. Barbell sets was essentially a once-off purchase. They needed to find a way to actually make more money off of the consumers. So they came up with the idea of, well, let's sell them protein supplements, which is going to help them increase their weight, increase their size, increase their strength. But it was basically a marketing scheme, if you think about it. And I'm not aware if Kevin took things like that. Kevin focused very much on whole natural foods. Get your foods from the natural forms and sources, and make sure that they are just prepared correctly and eat that.
I know definitely protein powders he was not interested in.
Yeah, no, that would make sense. But he would always say to me, the best thing you can take is creatine, specifically monohydrates. Creatine, it's known to increase muscle volume, improve strength, improve recovery, endurance. It's very, very well known. It's actually been researched. It does a wonderful job. All the other stuff, maybe not so, especially for the average person like myself or yourself. We don't need the other things. If you need supplements for very specific reasons, that makes sense, but otherwise you shouldn't really be taking other stuff. It should be in your diet. But if you have a deficiency or an issue, that obviously makes sense. Kevin also did actually speak about Arthur Jones. There's a little interesting story. I don't know the story too well, but I don't know if you remember the car, the DeLorean.
Yes.
So Arthur Jones employed the guy that was involved with this, and Arthur Jones ended up firing the guy because he got busted for drugs. But that's, you know, more on stories that Kevin told me. He even told me stories about Charles Atlas. I don't know if you know who Charles Atlas is or was. So he came up with the dynamic tension system where, you know, you would just push against your own force for exercises to build muscle. They used to have these in comic books back then in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, where the scrawny kid gets sand kicked in his face on the beach. And then he reads about the Charles Atlas system, and he does the system. And the training system was not using weights, certain exercises. And in fact, that was my very first workout. Before I joined the gym, my father I actually have a South African version of the Charles Atlas course. It was just a binder, and in the binder, it's got the pages for the different exercises, and then a record where you would track the exercise, your measurements, and how it went. So I've got that, which is, I forgot to mention, that is also very, very rare that I still have that. I think that is from the 50s or the 60s. But anyway, Charles Atlas had the system, and he kept on saying, you know, this is how I got these muscles, this is how I got bigger and stronger. And it turned out he got sued for this because Charles Atlas, yes, he was doing this, but on the days he wasn't doing this, he admitted that he was training with weights as well. And his excuse was, no, but that was just to help aid this. And I remember Kevin telling me that story. So the irony with Arthur Jones and Nautilus, he sold off Nautilus. He had a multi-million-dollar empire from these machines. He was a rival to Joe Wider and the magazines. He was really well known in the industry. He started Medex. He eventually sold that off, made millions from Medex as well. He was an inventor. He kept animals. He had animal zoos. But he made millions off of these machines and this system. And then in his final book, he has a paragraph. You can find it on the internet. Arthur Jones says, you know, you can build all you need at home to train, and you can get close to 80-90% of your genetic potential just doing squats, and he specifies one-legged bodyweight squats or barbell squats, obviously, but if you don't have that, and then with the one-legged squat, a dumbbell in the hand might help, okay? But he also says dips and chins done correctly and even weighted, with those 3 movements and maybe a calf movement, you can reach your genetic potential. So this is a man who made...
Or 90% of that.
90, yeah, 80 to 90%. And for us, that's what we're trying to do. We just want to improve on ourselves. And that's who the target market actually is. But it's very interesting that someone who made all their money selling these machines, stating the benefits, which they definitely are, is saying, if you just keep it simple, that's all you need to do. And when I joined Kevin, permanently training, I basically did a version of that routine, which was we spoke about the hip and back machine, and then leg press, and then I would do chins or dips. Kevin and I eventually moved it over where I didn't do the hip and back anymore, and I moved from doing pull downs, because initially I was doing pull downs on his pull down machine, and anybody who's trained here knows when you do pull downs, there's always an extra plate or 2, so you do more weight than you planned on doing the first few reps. But I did squats, and Kevin got me into doing 20 rep breathing squats. So that's where you take a big breath of air, go down, and then as you come up, you release the air. Very, very demanding on the system, on your lungs, your legs are killing you. It's a hell of a workout. And I eventually got up to about 115 kilos, 120 kilos doing squats in that method, full squats. Kevin also, I remember Kevin being surprised at how flexible I was, that I could actually do squats all the way down. He said a lot of his trainers that came to the gym, not all of them could do that full range of motion. And I was doing that with, for me, small guy, 120 kilos, squats like that. I was happy with that progress. The chins that I was doing, and Kevin also, was never wide grip. It was always shoulder width, palm supinated, because the bicep is the weak link in the movement, so you want the biceps to be in the strongest position. I was doing those with the dip belt that's over there, and an extra 15 or 20 kilo dumbbell. I think I moved up to about a 20 kilo dumbbell. Doing that, I think it would have been around about 6 to 8 repetitions. Kevin always said to me, after 5 reps, you're doing cardio, which I found very, very funny. And then I would go on to do dips, and again, dip belt. I think I had a 25 or 30 kilo dumbbell, and then also do that to failure. Everything was always to failure, and as I've stated, you think you've reached failure, and then Kevin gets you to do 3 or 4 more reps. And I'm not going to lie, there were lots of times I hated Kevin during a set. I really despised him, but I know it was for my benefit. And I don't know if other trainees have experienced this. I used to get quite anxious on my way to the gym sometimes, because I had to psych myself up because I knew what I was going to experience. And then after the workout, I would sit over there. Kevin would actually sit where you are sitting. He'd offer me coffee. And I've noticed this, a lot of people have said they would sit and have coffee with Kevin. And I'd sit and I'd have coffee with Kevin. And first 3 times it was maybe 10, 15 minutes. But eventually it turned into a point where I was spending an hour, 2 hours just sitting and talking to Kevin. We would talk about bodybuilding, and he would never mention bodybuilding. He would never talk about what he did, what he accomplished, how he trained, who he met. I'd actually ask him the questions. He'd be more interested in talking about music from the 60s, 70s, 80s, classic rock, proper classic rock, not what's considered classic rock now, because I'm a fan of that music as well. We'd talk about different sports. Maybe we'd talk about politics or what's going on in the world. So it was a great experience, and I've noticed a lot of the people you've interviewed have said the same thing. Yeah, you could just sit here and have a discussion with Kevin. My wife joined this gym as well. We would both train, so Kevin would train her, and then he would train me. Or sometimes he would train me first, so I could use the 15-20 minutes he trained my wife, just so I could catch my breath back and stop. I don't know if you've experienced it. A lot of the times I feel like I'd be shaking quite a bit after a session, just from the effort and the exertion.
Yeah, definitely very intense, and yeah, you need to catch your breath after a workout.
Anybody who's never experienced it, I know a lot of guys like to think they train hard, and they definitely do train hard. And a lot of guys do really train hard. But until you've had someone like Kevin, who's had decades of experience and knowledge, and then add on to that using high intensity training principles or heavy duty training principles, you've never experienced it before. I'll never forget the one day after a session, I was leaving here, and there was a gym equipment salesman who had stopped off. He must have seen the sign, and he wanted to sell Kevin a treadmill, but it's a type of treadmill. I don't think it works on electricity. I think it's self-motorized. And Kevin said to him, well, I think you've got the wrong gym, but come in, I'll show you. And I just laughed as I walked out, because I knew this guy didn't know what he got himself into. I wish I actually stayed just to see the conversation and see the guy's face, because I know for a fact he didn't make a sale that day. Kevin didn't believe in treadmills. He didn't believe in bicycles, no cardio. He said it was down to diet. Yeah, so that's another thing I remember from Kevin. You know, as I'm talking, I'm remembering these things. Kevin was just such a, in Yiddish, there's a term we use, it's called mensch, good person. He never had a bad thing to say about anyone. He was always willing to help people. He was friendly, he was kind, he was always laughing and telling jokes. He was just such a good person. And when I was at his funeral, I was just amazed at the lives, the amount of people that Kevin actually touched, that he affected, not just in the strength community, but at his church, in his personal capacity. He was just such a great man and a great friend. And I do actually really miss him. And I regret not coming to see him when I said I was going to. I kept on saying, I'm not going to be able to make it this time, next time. And yeah, if I could change one thing, it would be that. But I kept in contact with him. And I just, I wish I hope he knows how much he influenced me and my life. And I'm sure he's aware. And I've heard everyone else say the exact same thing. And I also want to thank you for having me on here, so I get to talk about Kevin and how he has affected my life and the history around this gym and the equipment in here. You know, those benches come from Reg Park's gym. Some of the dumbbells, the Nautilus equipment. Everything in here is just, anybody who is a fan of bodybuilding history, especially South African bodybuilding history, this is a gem, this place. So thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, great, thanks. Thanks for watching, everyone, and remember, always just be the best version of yourself. Till next time, think muscles.